Young teen parents. My biological father didn't really have any part of my life, emotionally, physically, or financially. My mom did marry when I was an infant. She married a man that raised me as his own daughter. However, when I was about 12, I found out that he was addicted to cocaine and an alcoholic, which caused a lot of turmoil in our home, as you could imagine. Growing up in an addict alcoholic environment created a lot of toxic mindsets. I so desperately wanted a father that loved me, that if I could just be perfect, that I would gain that love. And so I became a super overachiever. I was a ballerina who danced in New York City with the Joffrey Ballet Company, a beauty queen, a semifinalist for Miss Teen USA, and then a strong academic student. However, by my early 20s, I then began to fill myself with the very things that I despised. I began to use alcohol and drugs, and what was casual use quickly became abuse for me. I was running an operation of distribution from Southern California to Colorado. I was manufacturing methamphetamine, and I don't say that to glorify it. I say it to allow you to understand the depths of the grip that addiction had on me. I ended up serving a 1-year sentence for a drug conviction, and it was in that place that Jesus stepped into my life. And what I thought was the greatest hardship actually became the birthing place of my greatest victory. Some stranger came in, I can't tell you who he was, but he was willing to come in and bring the gospel, and I heard it for the first time in a way that made sense to me, that I had a God who loved me, a creator who knew me. I had always lived believing that I was an unplanned accident, a mistake. And then I read the words that said, he knew me before he formed me, that he planned the exact moment of my birth. And how radical that was to me, that I had been living my whole life out of a lie that I believed, and it had led me to a reality that I never belonged in. And yet we had this great God who met me in that space and came in and overshadowed all of those facts and circumstances. And so I gave my life to Christ, and he delivered me 100%, radically transformed me. I became voracious for the Word of God. I wanted to know who my God was, and I wanted to understand what his purpose was in my life. And so I finished my sentence, and I married. Coming out of there, married a wonderful man who decided to dedicate his life to Christ as well. We were infertile. We had tried for 7 years to have children, but we were blessed with an abandoned little girl. We got to raise her from the age of 7 to 14. So for 7 years, I had abundance and harvest. And Jesus said, I died to give you life and life abundantly to the full. And for 7 years, it was to the full. So much so that we said, okay, let's not be the ones who forget to thank Christ. And so we began to search out how we could serve God with our lives and apply to Wycliffe Bible Translators. We found out on a Friday night that we were accepted. Wycliffe had said yes to us, which was utterly amazing that God could use our lives in this way. Broken people who had been restored by Christ, that we just were so hopeful in a mountaintop weekend. And then that Monday, a Newport Beach police officer was knocking on my front door saying he wanted to drive my daughter and I to Hoag Hospital, that my husband at 36 had suffered a massive heart attack. And when we arrived to Hoag, I learned that he didn't survive that. And those were hard times. And so on the mountaintop high, I suddenly was thrust into the valley low. And he passed away in August of 2004. Shortly thereafter, I lost custody of that little girl that we had been raising for 7 years in November. And by February, I had lost our home in Newport Beach. And so here I was. Fortunately, a wonderful couple from the church invited me into their home. I followed my call from God, continued to serve with Wycliffe and advancing the kingdom through Bible translation. It was there that I went on a trip to Israel, and on the banks of the Jordan River formed a friendship with a pastor who reminded me that God had such a passion for me. He was pursuing me, not to give up, not to lose hope. And 2 years later, he introduced me to my husband now. And so I'm married to a wonderful man, Kevin. So we have a wonderful daughter, Haley, and a son, Hunter, who are 12 and 11 now. And through the 2 years that I was in widowhood, I know that God was asking me 3 things. Do you still love me? Do you still trust me? And do you still want to serve me? And those things were easy to say yes to when my life was full. My answers were still yes. He never left me. He never forsaken me. And I think that in the scriptures, it's so clear that it says, she rises while it is yet dark. And that is from Proverbs. And my thing is, maybe it's not a time of the day. Maybe we rise while it is yet dark in a season of our life, and we overcome. It says, a just man falls 7 times, though he rises again. And how can we rise again when we come to those spaces in our life where we think it's the end, when we think it's over, when we think there's nothing left? God has shown through my life over and over and over again that the story is never finished. He's the author and finisher of my faith. I got called to chaplaincy, which is what I do now. I get to sit with people who are finding themselves in a pit of despair and despondency. Someone asked me once, what is it exactly you do? And I said, I inspire resiliency. And so that's been my story, is one of resilience. I am His, and that I have gone from rejected to accepted.